Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Extra Mile. I'm Justin, and that's the G5. What's up, George?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good.
He's good. And over in the dark corner of darkness and abyss, it's Caleb in Caleb's corner.
Hello.
But we fixed that in post. How are you, Caleb?
Good.
How was camp?
Good.
Awesome. He's a man of few words, but man, they have great impact. George, we have special guests here on the podcast, The Extra Mile.
We do.
Why
Yes.
don't you go ahead and introduce them?
All right. We have Tim King and his wife. Is it Leah? Okay, good. I was like, I know it starts with an L. We're honored to have you guys on and have you here in Lubbock and just to hang out with the youth as well. And so we're going to have you on and get a sense of not just what you're talking about, but who you are and introduce yourselves and just have a good time.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Where's home? Where do you hail from?
Baytown.
Yeah. Are you from there?
Southeast Houston, yes.
Yeah.
Deer Park, Pasadena. It's
Deer
kind
Park.
of are you familiar with that?
Well, once again, I just stare at a map all
That's
day.
where Texas won their independence.
Yeah.
So that's
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Santa Ana.
Birthplace of Texas. We have a
Wow.
monument.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so we're famous.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, you're more Texan than ever.
We have a
than anyone
monument,
else.
a really high
Like
monument.
it's the replica of like the one in DC.
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
like
So I was looking at that because I actually am about to take a new my third quarter trip to Houston to our home office and just do a visit. And I was actually looking at San Jacinto, the battlefield. And I've never been there. I'd like to go.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's cool. It's home.
That's our backyard. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That was really cool. I've never been. So
that's where we're from.
Maybe pretty close. You can go to Galveston.
yeah, but now I kind of want to see the battlefield and the monument.
Yeah.
I want to change our whole trip.
You can do that.
Yeah, I could.
So we've got two kids,
Mm-hmm.
a daughter who's 10 and a boy who's 7.
Nice.
So that keeps us busy.
Mm-hmm.
And we are full-time with the group Church in Anahuac. We've got 6 years with them, which has been really awesome. A good amount of that being where our kids have been able to be grown up with that group. And that's been just kind of our footprint.
Yeah.
As even I feel like a married couple, even though we've been married for almost 20 years, it's kind of like our life just recently has been most.
Did you mean newlyweds?
What did I say?
A married couple. You are a married couple.
We've been married couple for almost 20 years. Did I say newlyweds?
No.
Anyway,
You were implying
fine.
that there was like a rebirth
Yeah.
of relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This-
You meant to say newlyweds.
This is
it feels
this is
like,
all very good.
right.
okay.
Newlyweds
Sure.
again.
But it's just been like a true ministry. I guess that's the point I'm getting to is that
Yeah.
life began its awesome growth phase once we started with Anahuac, it feels like. Just having a lot of good ministry efforts, a lot of them youth-based. We got into something that I had put aside for so long, which is pitching instruction with kids.
Mm.
And for years she'd said, you need to do it. And finally I had a friend who reached out and I did it after asking, should I? And I was like, let's do this, even though I feel like I shouldn't be getting paid for it. And it just changed everything in our world. So I started having more people reaching out and actually turn it into somewhat of a business. But that effort has allowed me to get a lot of one-on-one relationships with these kids that have been pretty amazing and still are. I mean, it's still something that's going on, but it led also into coaching a high school homeschool baseball program.
Okay.
And so that really shifted us into that world of youth-based just activities to keep engaged with them and putting ourselves out there in a world that is super comfortable. Baseball is what I grew up doing. And it's always going to continue, I would imagine, in my life in the ways that are super cool like that. So getting to do from one-on-one to coaching a team down to even my son, who I just coached for the first time, which isn't fun yet. That was 7-year-old coach pitch. But soon it will turn into more of that same orientation, I think, just with knowing kids are our life in a really cool way. And then there's Dry Creek Camp. That's the other part of our ministerial efforts, I guess, with the youth is that Dry Creek FC Dry Creek Camp.
Okay.
So yeah, got a name drop. Most people will be like, oh yeah, okay, now that makes sense.
That makes sense. There we go.
So yeah, that's kind of overview of what's exciting right now and how we got there.
It sounds busy.
It has been. I actually, thankfully, was recommended a really good book that slowed me down from John Mark Comer. I'll do another name drop.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. If you have not gotten into that, be ready
Is that
to
a
change
good
your
book?
life. Yeah,
Really?
It really flipped me.
I didn't read it.
But
You just got all the info from him.
yeah,
You're like, "Ah."
just it was one of those that slowed down everything and kind of started cutting some unneeded activity
Was it
out
just
of the way.
ruling your life?
Well, and yeah, I mean, I didn't realize it
Hmm.
was pulling me away from my own kids. I was investing to everyone else's kids, and it came full circle whenever, oddly, my son and I are going to the field to just kind of throw the ball around, and he asked if I could coach his team, and then that's when it kind of spun to mine. I'm like, I guess, like, I didn't think you'd be asking me that, but that thought was pretty clear. Like that's what I want, is to coach my own son and to venture into his future, if it's baseball or not, still just having that connection that's real and it's invested into. And that's something that I was missing, just with how busy life was on the outside of the home with all of these things that I had just mentioned. But it led to where we are now. It's led to a lot of neat things, but the family almost missed. I almost missed the family in a really big way. I'm thankful that it got turned around last year. So it's kind of like whenever you're in a work project and you say yes to the boss on something that could lead to something so amazing for you as an individual, but you forget about them. And that's unfortunate. It tends to happen a lot. It's like we get this big dream and vision. This is what we're going to do. And then we forget we have a family to tag along, and we need their support
Yeah,
too. So
they need you.
I was doing a lot of me, not in any other way, but just to say I want to be successful with what I'm given the opportunity to do. So
Interesting.
yeah.
So take us back a little bit. I mean, how'd you come to Christ and grow up? And
I start with her.
oh, okay.
Without her, I'd say that my chances would have been limited. Then again, you don't know what the Lord intends, but just knowing what we know, He's positioning her into my life in a way at the end of my senior year when I was about to go on this baseball journey.
Oh, okay.
And I in all heart of hearts believed I was going to be on the big stage one day.
Wow, Major
know?
League.
So yeah, Major League Baseball. And that was, until she entered my life, the only focus in life. I mean, we can get down to how bad it was with school, and I wasn't a good student. I made enough to pass, to keep playing, but it just goes to show I had no interest in anything other than just baseball. So she comes in, and then that relationship after a couple of years turned into where I realized there's something that I'm in love with that is outside of baseball, and success with my family, pleasing them in ways that are super awesome and making them proud. There's more to it. And I realized she had a relationship that was different with people that I wasn't tied to in my life, and they're called Christians, by the way. I thought I knew. It's kind of like a story I always go into telling. Like growing up, I called myself a Christian, quote unquote, and I had the different accessories to state that I was, from body wear down to just knowing the words to say. And I was really good at being in those youth-based activities where I could play with these kids on a Wednesday night and call myself one of them, right? And that's just who I was. A neighborhood invitee to these church things. And I, soon after, had gotten into their church, and I realized everyone's different in a way that they're consistently, like, treating you in a way that is genuine. And a lot of little indicators like that had me realize there's something different, but I didn't know what that was. Until the ultimatum came one off season. She says, something's going to have to change. We're either going to part ways or you figure things out, because I think they saw the direction I was going with just me and my consumption of my dream, right? So she suggested a study with Bubba Garner. I don't know if you guys know who Bubba Garner is, but he's best friend, super awesome guy, and studied with him, and it made sense. A lot of things locked in. He put it in a really neat way that allowed it to be seen, and that turned my life around. And that was in December of 2003, and I was 19. So that was 2002. Thank you. Yeah, I was 19. I was 2 years into my baseball career. I was 17 when I got drafted. A kid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
My parents had to sign with me on my contract. That's just how I was a boy and going on to like Pinocchio to the world of paradise where it's just everything you can consume and there's no limit. And that's what I did for 2 years on the East Coast with tons of money and getting lost in just the crowd that accepts you and distant from anything that would allow for some structure that's good, which was home and her family in a way that I didn't see, but I liked it. And so that, when this exchange of this transformation happened just overnight, I realized there's a life that I'm going to have to redo here. And so in the locker room, I had a lot of new ways that I had to learn to talk, and it just all that to just speed forward to say that it began then. And being someone who I knew I didn't want to go back to, little did I know it was going to be hard, as it has been for the past 20 years now, but it started then. And now it's become one of those where as soon as I got out of baseball, I knew it was going to be a preaching role that I wanted to be in. Because of Bubba's influence, I think that was a lot of it. But I got my first Wednesday night in that little window that I was playing baseball, and people were listening to me whenever I would, say some things. And it was like a Wednesday night that I had gotten up there and talked about whatever I talked about. And it was normal. It felt right. And I loved it. And that's when I wanted to be a preacher, but I didn't know what I was signing up for when I said that. What life it would have what I needed to do to have a life that looked like a preacher's life. But it happened through transformation, through Jesus Christ. It was undoubtedly him all along, and it was not anything I could take any claim to except by saying yes every day, right? And so that whole part of my life, just from baseball up until I'm where I am now, there was a lot of things that I had to do to get through, such as retail life and having to figure out people and the business of just knowing who man is in a way that is not enjoyable if you're a preacher figuring it out for the first time at 23 years old. So thankfully, I was like, I'm not mature enough at 23 to preach. And I went into the retail world and got into upper management, learned human resources, learned that people can be hard and tough, but here's how you can manage that. And so it's like that allowed some things to happen for me to use in the tool belt as a preacher. So I'm thankful for that. But you start to see how it all traversed into the direction of one day becoming someone who would be able to use what I love, which is baseball, as kind of a way to connect to the younger, but also the passion for transformation and the desire to want others to experience the same is what preaching, I feel, has really become a part about, or what it's all about. So yeah, my message oftentimes whenever I get a chance to is discipleship and sharing what could be if you truly give your life over. And it's one of those that I think we try to have people understand as best as we can, but it's oftentimes so hard until they surrender and give themselves to it 100%, even though we wish they would always do it that way. But my whole goal is to have people hopefully see that it's possible no matter where you are, even if you're about so seemingly thinking you're about to make it into a millionaire lifestyle and it's going to be awesome for you, but what expense, right? That's kind of what I started to see. And I really hope that there's a lot of those younger people that can recognize that I've got that same Pinocchio opportunity to go to Adventureland and get all these awesome things. But am I going to be with the donkeys and the fools and those who are going to get me there and think that that's the life to live? So I'm hoping to bring some of that to mind, but yeah, altogether, I think that preaching was in a really neat way back whenever I had first converted, fit into all of this.
So when did you start preaching?
Officially 2013. That's whenever I was let go of my role in retail.
Okay.
And it was a God thing. And one of those that's like easy to know this is the direction to go because all the other doors were shutting.
Yeah.
And things were getting hard and you almost have to go this way in order for it to work out well.
Yes.
I wanted to preach so badly. And after losing the retail job, there was like this period of time, 6 months, that we didn't have any work. Nothing was happening. I'm like, maybe this isn't it. So without all the details of that, I guess just journeying through, you see that being a preacher even from the start, you're not sure, is this what I should be doing?
Mm-hmm.
And you even question that every season along the way. Sometimes that tends to happen. But so yeah, 2013.
That's really cool.
I'm thankful I said yes to it.
Yeah.
Preaching has been.
I'm glad you did too. Is that accurate? Was he right?
Yes.
Yeah. No clarifying stories. How'd you guys meet exactly?
Our senior year in high school through a mutual friend.
Oh, okay.
I kind of always bring up this point with when I'm talking to like the younger kids and stuff, like the girls or whatever, that there was a time, I think it was my junior year or senior year, my friends I had been friends with for a long time kind of were veering off to the popular crowd, or the ones that go out and, drink, go to the parties and stuff. And so I knew I didn't want to be a part of that. And so I kind of found another group of friends, and that's how I met Tim. I think I changed a group of friends, like trying to do the right thing and, be the good example. And that's how I found him. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, now you're here and we're talking about legacy. That's your main theme. And it's a big thing to think about. When you're thinking about legacy, when you were preparing, what to talk about here, I mean, what comes to mind?
It is a growing, I don't know if you say concept, but the idea of being a legacy has been, I think, still a project that will continue, because I'm learning more and more as we see things through Scripture, like even hearing you guys mention the legacy of David, David, he went into Solomon in the high school class. So I know that you guys have been talking about it, so it's going to be picked through more as we work through the year, right? But even in what I've learned and ventured into, there's kind of the idea of its origin, and then down to what we've taken it metaphorically, which is to make yourself known after you've left, and what mission you had embarked on, and what you leave behind for others to follow. Leaving them something of reward or something of benefit is kind of the idea of what a legacy is. And so when you put all that into mind, you start to see that legacy is leaving behind something for someone to follow. Well, it was from the very beginning, I believe, that it was in design. When you start to see what God had intended for man whenever he created them in Genesis 1. And like verse 26 said, let us make man in our image. So there's this character-bearing kind of idea that was instilled from the start. And then he goes on to mention such as be fruitful, multiply, and all of these different mission-based kind of things that I think about that you are intended to do by way of how I created you to do it. And you're unique in your own way. The dogs can't do this, but you're going to do it and do it well enough to where others will follow suit. Procreate, fill the earth, create with the material I've given you on the earth kind of deal.
Rule and subdue.
Subdue, there's the word. Yeah. So I see that, and to how well one finds their identity and purpose within what God, from the beginning, I saw as like a way to go here, leaves behind for others to follow suit. And when you get into how well you can do those things, such as your character and bringing about the fruit, that's what he says, be fruitful. And that's interesting that you don't see that idea until New Testament time again. And what I'm seeing a lot of is that concept of fruit.
That's interesting.
And you've got this metaphorical sense of who I am and the character of who I am, and people are feeding off of that. And that's the first thing he says is be fruitful. And then he says multiply, and then I think subdues last, but there's another one in there. So those are the sorts of ideas that how, as an individual, am I applying myself with intentionality to bring about the best fruit producing tree that I am? If you go to Psalm 1 and tie in the idea that I'm a tree by a stream of water, or Jeremiah's idea of being a tree. So all of that, I think, comes to this suggestion about a legacy. What is it that I'm doing that has you say, yeah, that's something to follow right there? And I think it starts with just those ideas in Genesis 1, from what I found up to this point, right?
That's really cool.
That's kind of where I'm at right now. And
I've never really connected that with Genesis, and I mean, I've noticed him say that, be fruitful and multiply, and then connecting that to New Testament. I mean, we're to be fruitful and produce fruit along with this, in line with the Spirit. Multiply, make disciples.
How we are in our relationships. I mean, the triune relationship is perfect. And it seems to me that when God had saw that man was lonely and provided a helper suitable, there was undoubtedly the call to go and make more humans, and
Right.
there needs to be something familial about this, but there's also the expectation to go out. You know, you get to the Tower of Babel and they're all together, huddled, learning one language, becoming what they're becoming. But there's this expectation to go out into all the earth, it seems. I think that same idea happened whenever the Christian movement started, right? They were all huddled in one place in Jerusalem. They needed to go out and disperse. And I see that kind of as the responsibility. What are we doing to go out with what we got? Are we keeping it contained, or am I it's kind of like the song that you guys are learning, Called Me Higher. I can just sit here in your presence and just wait for you to show up. But you've called me higher to go out and share, to be something that you were, in light of what I know I can do as well, because you left me something to follow. So that's how I start to see a lot of the connection from up to now, is just that sense of what Jesus did so perfectly, from the fruit to, you name, down to how he interacted with everyone. That's something that's to be followed. And it's also the way, as he said. He said that's the life. That's the true life. And when you start to think about what he says to do about it, to take up my cross, or take up your cross and follow me, there's also the sense of, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. So the way that you're going to be led here and taught, I've done it, and it's the right way. Come and do the same, and you'll start to see that there's some efficacy in what you're doing every day in your relationships, how you react to life around you, and what that's doing for others who are seeing and investigating you. And I think that's kind of in a bombshell what comes to mind with legacy. So the hard part now is trying to figure out how you get these kids to see the importance of legacy. And the only thing I've been able to kind of surmise with that is, you've got another side to this creation story, which is the desire for immortality. And I don't know who doesn't want to live forever, even if they don't want to admit it. But like, you think of the movies, that's kind of the premise of the story, is finding the potion that has you live forever, and you'll kill to get that. It doesn't matter what happens, because immortality is desired by us. And so eternal life, I think, is something that God has put within us to starve for, or to be inclined toward, to where we know that we have to do something in respect to that.
A fountain of youth.
Yeah. So I think that's what the kids need to hear, maybe. At this moment, I'm thinking about that, is just, it's something that you don't want to mess this up. And that what you're hearing from what everyone's sharing around you is that immortality is through Jesus Christ, eternal life. The moment that you believe in him is the moment that you have life forever. But are we seeing it like that? Because, that he left us something that we can now have, which is eternal life. So
it's hard for younger people, I think, to realize that, to get a sense of mortality, if they, especially if they haven't lost anyone, and get a sense of that appreciation. I was thinking about that, thinking of my own family, and just like, I don't know, you just live kind of recklessly at the beginning, or you can at least, and not think about the end. I mean, you're just living life. And I don't know how you get to the point, or you can help a young person get to the point where they're seeing the end, where they can play an end game. If that makes sense. I don't know how to answer.
I think that the story of the prodigal son is there because there are many who won't listen, regardless of how adamantly you appeal to them.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. The point is that God is there waiting. He's waiting for you to come back. He's looking for you.
A little trouble and distress will help them.
Yeah. It's a subject, at least something that I've personally experienced, but it's one of those things where I think that there are going to be some that just willfully submit because it's the thing that they know. And but then I don't really teach the youth, so I'm sort of appealing to you all who that's your ministry is. I mean, I grew up in the church. I grew up around loving people, or at least it seemed at the time. And I knew what was right, but then also saw how hateful that people can be whenever they're not really, I would say, doing it in love. they could be right and they could say the right scriptures and they could absolutely tell you that you're doing wrong to your face and all things can be working really well. But then if you have not love, then it didn't have its desired effect, which is, I guess, control. If you come up in like a strong, overbearing household without, but that wasn't my experience. It was just, you go off into the world and you get to make your own decisions. You see all of the opportunities that are laid out in front of you. You strive for them. You work hard. You have discipline. And I made that sort of recognition of what you were saying about your baseball career, is that I'm sure it took a lot of discipline and work, focus, attention, thought, intent to be able to be that good, to be signed at 17. And then you go and you still have that focus, that discipline, that intention, and you work hard and you dissect every small muscle movement. And, if I put my finger here on the laces, it'll do this, and work. Oh, that's my slider, that's my curveball or whatever. And then, this is how I see the batter doing this. And so you just get more and more and more attuned into almost that fourth dimensional thought. And then, as you said, you're around an environment where that's everybody's focus. And then when you're in the locker room, it's locker room talk. Hey, let's go out to the bar. Hey, let's go over here and check out these girls. Hey, let's go over here and check out, whatever. Hey, here's this stuff that is passed out at the party. What do you think? Everybody's doing it. And it just seems that that's not baseball. That's everywhere. That's business. We've had conversations with people who they were introduced to that at a business party. I have a lot of experience in the theater, but I'm sure that it's everywhere. And these influences are constantly there. We can prepare our kids. Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Don't do drugs, kids. And then here we are 20 years later, and it's like, wow, we're openly talking about taking shrooms and taking drugs, and that we're legalizing drugs now. So it seems that all of those efforts of trying to control didn't really work. People are always questioning, well, why is it so bad? Let's look at the science, So in some ways those might be good. In some ways this might be bad. But what I would observe is that the discipline that you focused into your activity to be excellent, now we've realigned that through Christ of, I want to be excellent in heart. I want to be an excellence to my fellow man and to God. And then now, instead of working on my slider, or working on my curveball, or working on being able to throw from third to first, or whatever, now I'm focusing on, hey, when somebody does this to me, I'm not going to respond in kind. I'm going to respond this way, because the people that I read about in the scriptures did it and then befell some calamity or what have you. But then the maturity of that discipline and that work is them following after God and following after Christ. And then Christ's grace and his gift is that he allows us to do that. He allows us to mature. And so those are inspiring messages from middle-aged, having experienced it. And my children, I have a 12-year-old boy now and a 4-year-old daughter. And so those are always on my thoughts. Like, how do you appeal to someone whom you love who then won't listen to you because you're their dad? It's like, oh, dad's on his tirade again. He's always talking about these lectures, blah, And so that's always on my heart. And the only way that I thought to do it, which has made me a better person, is I have to model it. And I have to really believe it. And I have to put it into practice. Even when what I want to do is take a baseball bat and bash somebody's face in. It's like, wait, that's not what Jesus would do. And, and then you have to say, okay, well, why did I have that feeling? And so to me, it's a lot of introspective thinking and thoughts, and my relationship with God is very much sort of like, that's what I feel like. Why? Take that away from me, And then after you've had that little chat, you just sort of, maybe there's shame, maybe there's acceptance. I don't know. But to me, that's what I'm experiencing in my life and walk, which is I stumble because I'm passionate. But why am I passionate? I even had that conversation. I got so mad yesterday at work because somebody did something that was, I called out something in photos because I do photo review for electrical work. And they said, no, you're wrong. And and it set me off. And I said, wait, but why am I so angry that they're doing it wrong? It's just sort of like, well, I just need to be objective and say, well, it's wrong, regardless of whether you're listening or not. Let me quote the code at you, And so I'm trying to have that same passion and zeal for work and life, because I think that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to work toward our bosses like we're working toward God. But then if I do it so that I'm right, then it's wrong. Then it's never going to be communicated as like what Christ. And I think the minor shift is we do it because it's right, and then I just have to appeal to you. I have to stop at, let me show you, and then if you don't see it, then you don't. But that's not me saying youth, and that's something that I ask you, is that when you're dealing with people who are younger than you, who don't have a frontal lobe fully developed, who don't have life experiences, who are still in their parents' homes, how do you appeal to them at that level to get them to think, or how do you do that? What do you approach?
It's helpful when there's a theme, when they're all there in front of you for the purpose of what they signed up for. If it's a camp theme or if it's a Youth for God theme, if they're there because I invited them over and there's something that I'd like to share with them, in most cases I'm going to try to find something that I find interesting, that is a story worth telling, at least in that mode, to appeal to them in my own ways of paraphrasing, like let's just say something from one of the Gospels, trying to find questions that have them more in tune to discovering what's going on within themselves, like just more introspective, something that allows them to see that there is something to trigger here that's worth talking about, such as my relationship with mom and dad. And what does that look like? And why does it feel the way that you're thinking that it's bringing you, such as it's not a good thing between you and your mom? Why is the reason for this happening? And oftentimes, most of these discussions revolve around the same principles of what we're trying to do as adults, is be kind to people, be gentle to people. And they learn it as these little animals at a young age, and they just grow up with this, almost like the movie Inside Out, this unawareness of what's inside of them, but we're here to course that with them. And I think as teachers, as ministers, if you will, or just youth guidance counselors, we have to have that compassion and knowing that not only were we there too, but they're not fully developed and they're maturing, and we just need to help them see a better way to exclaim themselves or to emote what you're saying, or a better way to perceive it, because this is really how God may be intending it here. Like, you feel so dissatisfied, you feel so upset, but could this just be you being provided an opportunity to figure this out, like how to endure it, to see that this is a good thing? So that's kind of like a lot of the private counseling stuff that you get into there. But as a whole, what you're trying, I feel, to always do is insert something within them that day that they didn't come there with. And I say that all the time too. Like, I want you to leave here with something that you didn't walk in here with. And oftentimes it's an idea that I can. Sometimes it's an affirmation to the group, maybe something that they've never heard before that they need to believe in about themselves, because the Lord has made that known, that you're my children, for example. So what does that mean? And what responsibility do I have in regards to that? Like, this is an opportunity if I can just see what God would have me do in my relationship with mom and dad, and how that can be better and what that would lead to. So I'm always trying to figure out ways to trigger those sorts of things that I know they're oftentimes finding out is happening again and again and again, such as their social issues and bully encounters, or if it's a homeschool kid, it's a totally different platform they're dealing with. And it's oftentimes your siblings that you're sick of and have to figure out how not to want to kill your brother like Cain and Abel, right? But there's still the footprints of Jesus to follow, the gentleness, the guidance, the seeking to the peace that you want to have simply through prayer and thanksgiving, right? And so if I'm going to just be answering that question simply, it's to just try to have them be filled with what they came there as empty vessels, fill them with something that they can go and use. And oftentimes it's an idea.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that you're consciously telling them, hey, look for something to apply here to your life. I want you to walk out making sure you've got something, perspective, idea, whatever it is.
And even if there's a dozen questions you have in line with that theme, they only may hear one of them. And you'll sometimes see them get lost in thought. And you'll know that that's in mind, perhaps something to just catch more onto and lead them into some discussion if they never tend to talk.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting when you start to see that the conversations about Jesus and what he did so well, how much that appeals to us, because we know that's the bar. So what does it look like to have brotherly kindness? What does that mean? We read it. It's just a church word now, but there's action behind that. And here's what it looks like. And so I think that's a big part of what I like to do for them, is to help them see those words better and apply it.
It's really good.
So,
have you seen the new Inside Out movie?
Yes.
You did?
she has.
Oh,
She has. So
yeah.
you haven't. Let me
He
tell
was-
you the ending.
He was at one of the camps.
Oh,
and me and the
okay.
kids saw it, and he was like, "Oh, I wanted to see it," and we'll eventually see
You'll
it.
eventually get to it.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to talk about it. Well, Caleb doesn't have a microphone because he loved it, and
Yeah.
I'll make fun of it and bash it, and he can't say anything. No, it was good. I fell asleep, so I can't say much. Yeah, I was in the theater and I was just tired. But yeah, part one was good.
It was very good. Well, it's amazing how many truths are in that movie.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it?
The cognitive and all that stuff. Is really
It's a
interesting.
play on a lot of the emotions that we feel, and whether you've seen it or not, you resonate with that idea that there are these emotions inside you controlling you, and it takes a lot of growth. I feel like a long time. I was just thinking about this morning myself and as a teen, because I was watching the Olympics and there's fencing going on, and I fenced, high school and early adult, and then I got just reminiscing and thinking about who I was then, and I kind of hate myself, actually, who I was then. I was like, you were a horrible person, and it takes, but at the same time, I know that I appreciate that because I can see a complete difference, and I can see actually what God has done, and the growth that He's allowed me to have, and that's a pretty nice blessing, actually. And I appreciated that this morning, and thinking about that in my own youth. It's hard to get people to see that, and as younger people are growing to see that type of, 4 moves ahead, I should say. You just stick with it, and you're going to grow out of it.
You made me think of something, just kind of the progressive nature of figuring out who we are and how we can always become better. I think that happens later in life more naturally, but even earlier developmental years, I think about when you mentioned your parenting. One of the expressions that tends to always bring about the betterment of a situation is whenever you express the Father's love into people. And what you see there is sometimes, let's say, compassion, right? Like, so your kid does something that man, immediately it would deserve a no. Like, don't do that. That was dumb. But then instantly, how are we coaching through that? I say coaching because this is kind of a segue into just how you would coach, right? You don't ever coach with sarcasm. You don't ever express anger with sarcasm, because what's the difference? You're just trying to rub it off in a way that you're super upset, but you're just taking light of it. So don't coach like that, because they don't respond in kind to that. They don't find a connection to that because there's nothing divine behind that. That's not love. That's agitation and a frustration that you're using through words jokingly and maybe belittling something, right? So if we especially market that to children, oh man, if we're consistent with our own children and expressing the Father's love in super awesome ways, like they do something that just is so aggravating, such as drop something that scared us, and sometimes we'll react to that in a way that's a hammer, right? Just because we're already sick of their level of decibels at that point. We just want something that we can control, and we can't. But that's when I think it is super vital and important and highly expressive in nature to go through that with patience and gentleness and a way of understanding that such was my former self, right? I was like this, and I see that children will be like this, and I see that even high school kids that you coach will be like this. So be one who is of mature mind and understand that they're going to get there, hopefully. But I should be here already because I'm leading them. It's not easy. It's the power of Christ, right? It's not easy, but that's what he's leading us into here, is exhibiting himself through us in light of how he taught us. And I'm following that, and they're seeing that, and they're going to follow that voice. So I see all of those little segments to kind of just this grand idea of how you get these children to listen. I think the battleground is our own home and our own kids to listen, because we're sick of them doing certain things that we keep saying not to do. And they do it on purpose just to get your attention. Anyway, all of that to say that there's a dynamic there, it seems to be shared with all of those kids. And it's, what can I follow here? And hopefully it's you. You're the mentor. You're the one they see as awesome because you're the authority. But how are you going to use that? Is it going to be done right? Or are you going to be sarcastic and a guy who bullies them, and you'll never have a connection with them to lead them to Jesus through their hardship because they don't trust you? That's a lot to say, as if just to put to mind that there's always an opportunity with them. So
that's really good. So if your son decides to play baseball, what would you say to him?
I'm down for it, but you are going to have to want to. You're going to have to want to work for whatever you want to become. Like, if you can't just show up and expect people to think you're good, you're going to have to go out and do good things in order to bring good things to the table, such as working and learning to do, like, catching a ball correctly and where to go with it. I mean, just because you can do it on the video game doesn't mean you can do it in real life. So you have to work for that. I'm at the point where if he wants it, I'll facilitate whatever he desires there in regards to what's right and wrong. It's not right to miss a special event just so you can go play baseball. There's something that's of greater priority. So I'll manage that if that's what he's hoping to do here. You know, it started with, hey, Dad, will you coach me? Well, yeah, I'll coach you. Whatever's next, we'll talk about when it comes. But I'm hoping for him just to enjoy it. If I had to have the conversation one day about going pro, because let's just say he arrives there, that would be I'll be very honest, and I'll be very prayerful throughout that, undoubtedly. But man, it'd be hard to say go on and do it. Even the college life is hard to say yes to. But yeah, man, there's just something about it that I'm still not so sure about, if it's going to be safe to send off a kid to go, because they're traveling. They're everywhere. They're on a bus.
That's fair.
Everything I did is what they're doing, but it's easier and it's more opportunities than what I had to do things. So I'm not so sure I would advise to go and live that dream. But then again, that's not today we're talking about. So I was going somewhere with that. Oh, that was actually so one of the big dreams I had whenever I had gotten released from baseball is I wanted so badly to come back and somehow tell this locker room full of kids what to expect. And it's not baseball, by the way. It's not. It's a job. You've got guys in there who have children, who are married, who have more body hair than you, who've been through things that you haven't. So here's what you need to expect. And by the way, this is kind of the hierarchy of what you're under now. There's a boss, and you don't call him coach. You don't call him any of those names. He wants to be called by his first name. So there's a totem pole of expectations that you have to be under here. So buckle up. And by the way, you're going to have to learn to follow instructions such as shave every day and dress a certain way. And if you don't like it, you're not going to enjoy yourself, because it's not baseball. You're becoming a man in a world that you're professional. And
it's a business.
Yeah.
That's an easy way to say it. It is. And you have to learn that at 17, when all you do is perform really well with throwing a ball. That's all. I was a pitcher. So all I knew is how to do my work. And they're incorporating, of course, the greatest training that they had at the time. That was 23 years ago, so it's much better now. But that, in their mind, was the greatest. And so you needed to learn that. And yeah, man, wanting to have myself be an advocate and a voice for those who were signing up for something that they didn't know they were getting into, I wanted to save them from that. Maybe go to college first and knock some of the things off of the maturity block to get ready for what you might want to do here. But this is a big decision. So my kid going through that, I don't know, even some of my students going through that. It's awesome to think that one of my kids that I coach or train could go and be a professional athlete. But man, what I need to tell them before they sign up for that, I think that's where I don't know what I'd say.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either. I know that'd probably be a hard conversation, but I imagine you'd want to set them up the best that you can. That's your legacy, so that they can be successful, not just on the field, but in their faith. And despite how hard or terrible or even in fun an environment might be.
And even some of these kids who don't have faith, right? There's a lot of these ball players that they see me, and it's kind of like all they know is someone who's in the church. And when they find out that I'm a preacher, they're like, what? It never connects, right? I'm just a ex-baseball player, and they're coming to me for instruction. So when I tell them what I do, that creates some stuff. But whenever there's conversation being had that's speaking life into them because of what I know that they're capable of doing, and kind of having their minds be yielded more towards what they can believe in, that they're capable of, that when that life begins to happen, there's a really cool connection that you get with that person. And it's only you and them, because you've journeyed with them to this point, and this is our project together. And now you can speak things and say a lot that catches their attention about, the mental game. What's going on up here? Well, don't listen to the crowd over here who's telling you how to handle yourself. Let me give you something to think about. And it's oftentimes the relaxed life that Jesus taught us, how you handle these moments that seem to be so ebb and flow and knocking you off your balance. Well, there's a way to course through this, even when people say things that they shouldn't, that throw you off at sports. But here's how you handle that. And from a Jesus way, without really putting it all out there, book, chapter, verse, it's said, such as some of Proverbs just giving advice. Like it tends to lead to some cool stuff. And that opens a lot of their text messages or phone calls to me wanting to talk about something that's very personal, that's what's happening from all of that. So all of that, knowing that even kids who aren't Christians, aren't growing up in the church, still have so much that can be had from people like us if we just encounter them in a way that there's a connection that's very personable, but also leading to more than just what do we have in common with baseball, or what do we have in common with coffee, or what do we have in common with TV shows that we're connecting with.
I imagine there's something to teaching and then having an activity alongside each other.
Gaming's another one. Kids are gamers, man.
Really?
Not so much the females, but the boys. Man, you get them over for playing some games, and then you also break bread, eat some food. Everyone loves food. Everyone has their favorite thing that they love to eat. And when you share that kind of stuff together, it does something. And I think that's divine. That's Acts 2, Acts 4 stuff, right? But that whole idea is allowing these kids to be in a trusting kind of format with you, I think. So anyway, I kind of burned out that conversation.
No, you didn't. That's good.
That's good. And I think we're probably getting close on time.
5.
He has a big 5. That's cool. We'll edit that out.
So we got 5 minutes.
We'll edit that out.
We'll edit that out.
We've got 5
You okay?
minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. I just rattled the chain there a little bit.
That's right, King Arthur.
So we always ask our guests when they come on about the namesake of the podcast, which is the Extra Mile. That Jesus in Matthew 7 talks about that how we live as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus. That he says that if someone implores you to go a mile, which at the time Roman rule allowed a Roman soldier to conscript any person to carry a burden for them for the distance of a mile. It's just something that they had to do. And Jesus' instruction is go with them too. If someone takes your shirt off your back, give them your coat also. And so it's a way of thinking about not necessarily how you let people abuse you, but that if you do something as someone who might abuse you in kind, as Christ would want it, that it causes them to stop. It's like burning coals on the head. It causes people to, and it makes them stop and think. And so the instruction of Christ is to go the extra mile, and go with them another mile. And maybe in that extra mile, while they're contemplating, why is this person still doing this? They don't have to. That would open up their hearts to God. And so how would you instruct the listener and even the youth or people around you to go the extra mile in your own words?
Wow, that's a really good question.
Thank you.
Man, that's really good.
We'll do like slow-mo coffee pouring in this moment. Like comedians in cars.
Wow, I'm kind of stumped.
Well, that wasn't the intention.
No, I haven't figured it out either.
Yeah, well, and I think the idea is that we ask all of our guests, and then they sort of give us a minute or two, and then as we have compiled our guests and continue to compile, we'll have a nice little library of Christian thinkers who say, yeah, this is what I would do, or this is how I counsel listeners to go the extra mile.
So nobody, I don't think, wants to go the extra mile. If you're in that, what you explained as the scenario, it seems like Jesus is saying, do this because I know you're not going to want to. Mm-hmm. This isn't, they're imposing on your will, and because they have the upper hand, we're both made in his image, we're both human, they've just been given a role, and they're going to do something that I don't want to do here. What it feels like is, and there's this term, embrace, excuse the terminology, I guess, embrace the suck. Embrace the things in life that you hate. And I think it's a book that's called that, if I'm not mistaken. But that concept is this philosophy of just do it anyway, because it's going to lead to something that you may never see the inside of, nor the backside of. But you just trust that you were positioned at the right time to do what you were called to do, and just do it. I think of James 1:2-4, consider it all joy when you encounter these different things, because the testing of that's going to lead to something that's endurance. That's power for you to have if you can just endure this. And so I think of that, if there's something I don't want to do, and man, it wasn't set up for me to do it in the first place. It was just right place, right time. I'd have to just, on the strength of the Lord, say yes. Give me the power to say yes, and the strength to go through with it all the way without complaining as you would, because this is not what I want to do. I see that as the extra mile. It makes sense right now in the moment that it's going to be what I today, as another book says, eat that frog, the thing you don't want to do today, but you get it done the rest of the day is right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is the Lord's work maybe that happens in that mile extra stretch that he intends, because he knows how awesome you are at doing what you do in moments that he calls you to do them, and he intends to use that today. So I would advise that you do it without complaint.
Mm-hmm. I think that was a common thread of the three of us all taught a class this last quarter for the congregation here. And a lot of the themes that we were talking about was servitude and being an elder, shepherd. So how to be a leader in your local congregation, in the assembly, in your area, and in the world as a Christian. And what are we called to do? And that was a very interesting proposition for thought in Christian living, and saying, I don't necessarily want to serve other people. And then I would even propose that if you did serve with a begrudging heart, then you're still doing it for the wrong reason. And so the reason, as you said in James, is to do it with joy. You account it for joy because it's the working of God. And so when you encounter those moments, to willfully submit as, I don't want to, but you know what? I actually do, because in this moment, Christ can be taught. And then if you frame it in that mindset, now
it's purpose.
What is going to happen today?
It's
and
passion.
Bring it. And God, you give me that power and that strength. So I really reflect what you said. It's fantastic.
Yeah, use me. That's 2 Timothy 2, the idea of a vessel. We'll talk about that Sunday morning.
That's awesome.
Use me. right? That's you created me. You know what I'm capable of here, what I can hold on to, and what I can pour out for you, and what capacity I can. Here I am, send me, kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but help me to have the strength to not complain. Right,
Yep.
where
we don't want to be grumbling.
we can get tired.
That
and
extra mile will
grumpy
do
and-
that.
Yep.
Yeah, just start complaining and be like,
not
I'm
have our
good.
coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that is really good. I appreciate everything you guys have said and being on.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
That was a fast little session. That was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. Good conversation.
Well, like always, go so. If you want to know more about the Bible or you have any questions, our email is in the description below. You can DM us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're looking for a church family or you're in the Lubbock area, we invite you to come visit and hang out with us in Milwaukee. We love for you to find a church who practices the love of Christ.